Today with Jarret, we talk about going from custom homes to large multifamily projects, growing a team while still running lean. We talk about creating accountability with your subcontractors, ensuring loyalty from your team, and the balance between business growth and family life, and a lot of other great topics. So make sure you listen right to the end of this episode. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Constructive Conversations. The intention of this podcast is to explore mindset, actionable strategies that empower entrepreneurs to achieve success in all areas of life, while inspiring listeners to confidently pursue their own ambitious dreams. The reason I do this podcast is because 10 years ago, I knew I wanted to start a business, but I had no idea where to start, no role models to follow, and I didn't have the confidence to do it on my own. So the goal is to provide that inspiration for new entrepreneurs and to provide fuel for those who are already doing it. Joining us today is Jarret Oliver, owner of Modera Construction. They specialize in finished carpentry and multifamily projects in Calgary, and they've been doing it since 2006. Thanks so much for coming on today, Jarret.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate your time. So tell us some more about Modera Construction. What do you guys do? Talk a little more about your specialty.
Our team of finishers, we've really been focusing on multifamily projects in Calgary. I would say we turned our attention to multifamily projects maybe 10 years ago, kind of a transition from a lot of the custom home builders, custom projects, kind of B2C projects. We kind of transitioned slowly to multifamily just because it was a different challenge, I suppose, in terms of volume and productivity, which I actually really enjoyed that aspect of it. And it's a little different than the custom home pace. We still work with a number of builders that we have like good reputation or good relationships with. So we still like to do some custom stuff, but our main focus for the last 10 years has been larger multifamily townhouses, condos, couple hundred units or anywhere from here to we do a lot of work out in Canmore as well. So kind of the Calgary and surrounding area.
Yeah, so you really expanded from the small projects to it sounds like these are really big scope multifamily projects. What was it like in the beginning? So you said you were doing sort of smaller projects, custom homes. What did you start out with and why did you start out doing that specifically?
Well, actually, I started working with my stepdad when I was quite young, and that we had a lot of smaller builders that we worked for. Like this is going back to early 2000s, and there was a lot of smaller builders in Calgary, Chestermere, Airdrie. A lot of builders that would build maybe 10 to 20 houses a year, and they were kind of our main clientele. So you would always have custom aspects for homeowners that they would want, and we did a lot of that. But as time went on, the industry in Calgary kind of changed a little bit. Like the builders now build hundreds of houses a year, and it was maybe harder for, say, your normal finished carpenter who might be a crew of one or two or maybe three. You wouldn't get contracts with builders like that, right? So the landscape kind of changed.
Did you find you were growing like along with those builders? So like as they had demand, they said, hey, we need somebody, not just with a small crew, but we need someone to do this whole, development. Is that sort of, were they coming to you with that? And you said, oh yeah, well, we need to grow it in order to meet their needs?
I would say no. At that time, there was, Calgary's not that big, but it's still a small city. But there was a number of guys who had these contracts and you would work for them. That was kind of the avenue most people would take. But that transition with growing with those builders was more, you more fell into a subcontractor role. I think a large part of it too was probably my age. And maybe so at that time I would have been early 20s. Whether that was a perceived thing or not, I might not have had I didn't feel like I maybe had the reputation to be able to go to a builder and say, hey, let us take on this contract for your 150 houses a year or whatever. It might have been It might have been just kind of a thing of timing for me. Even though at that time I had quite a bit of experience because I've been doing it for quite a while. Going back then, you're dealing with a lot of kind of old school, blue collar, supervisors. They're not going to take you too seriously when you're 20, 21, 22, right? Kind of harder to get your foothold in that industry.
You started out with your stepdad. Was there a point where you said, okay, I'm going to go out on my own. I want to be leading my own company?
He was kind of stepping back from construction a little bit. He was starting to get really involved with local community charities and stuff. And it was kind of time for me to go out on my own. So I was kind of subcontracting through a couple guys. And that was kind of interesting too, because at that point, I'd never been out on my own, right? So I'd always worked for my stepdad. And I would say I didn't have the most confidence going into something, but at the end of it, I would always over deliver. Like I always found like at the end of a project, I could really tackle anything just based on my experience. So it actually went really well because I could go to any builder or any contractor for these builders, and I could take a house from start to finish, no problem. And that was kind of early in my journey where I maybe it's time for me to hire a guy and train a helper and kind of go down that path, which is, I suppose, the beginning of where we got today.
Nice. And what does your team look like today?
So today our team today consists of kind of, I would say it's structured in 3 different streams. We have kind of our salaried or hourly employees. They would mostly kind of fall, I would say they're in training, varying levels of experience. Because the barrier to entry with finished carpentry is quite low, once someone knows the trade well, it doesn't take a lot for them to want to do what I did, tool up and try and go make it on your own, right? So that would be our second stream, is the people that have tooled up and gone on their own. And many of those people worked for me hourly at one point, but kind of wanted to have the opportunity to earn a little bit more. So now they're kind of on our team as kind of a core contractor. So our core team is we're 8 people currently, and then I would say my third stream is kind of the subcontractors on the peripheral, and we have another 10 guys there, and those guys are going to be doing stuff that might be something that's slightly out of our scope or maybe slightly out of our geographical range. It might be excess work that we can't handle, but I know I can call on these guys to help out. Because as you know, construction, like you can have 3 projects going at one time, and then the next week maybe they all have wrapped up, and you're waiting a week for the next one. You never really know how the schedule's going to align, especially when you're dealing with multiple different developers, and obviously their schedules are independent.
That sort of that mix between payroll staff and subcontractors allows you to have the flexibility sort of to meet the needs from different developers depending on the schedule, I guess.
I run pretty lean. we kind of have to, right? Run pretty lean. We don't, because we have to keep, all of our costs in check. Obviously, you always want to make sure your cash flow is solid. But I find in doing it that way, one of the biggest advantages too is having the payroll move over to subcontracting is they're now owners, right? They're going to take extreme amount of pride in their work because they're accountable, right? So it's kind of a good way to, you're almost promoting within, right? Instead of training someone and then spend 2 to 5 years training someone, and all of a sudden they're just meticulous, fantastic finished carpenters, and then you just lose them to the industry. Calgary, I mean, it's big enough. There's plenty of places to go for work. I find I might sacrifice a little bit of profit, but if I pay them, I can retain them, and then I can build a strong team. And that's kind of one of the biggest things that I think we've been able to do is like we have a really strong team. Like, even though we're focusing mostly on multifamily, and some people might think, oh, multifamily is cookie cutter, it's easy, it's whatever. That may have been true in the past, and it may be true for some builders now, but today's home buyer, they're savvy, right? They want a good quality product, and the builders are demanding a good quality product because it's competitive. They have to sell a good, and condos aren't cheap anymore. You're going to spend $500,000 on a condo. So for us, whether we're doing millwork, hanging doors, casing windows, if that's a $3 million house or a $350,000 condo, that doesn't make a difference to us. Like, so all my guys or girls have a lot of experience in the custom home industry. We just bring that quality over to multifamily, and I think that really sets us apart. To be honest, we don't sacrifice quality at all just because it's multifamily and high volume.
I'm sure the builders appreciate that from you to bring the same level of detail to there. When you started out, did you have a vision of I want to be at this size doing multifamily 10 years from now, or was that like a natural growth?
Like I said, I worked for my stepdad. I feel like my path was kind of charted for me a little bit. Like, when I was young, I was always like the kid building a tree fort or whatever, right? Always loved to build. And when I was, my summer jobs were in construction. My grandfather, he had a small building, home building business in my hometown. Like I said, my stepdad was a finished carpenter. My uncle had a big plumbing company, so I worked for him for a summer. My mom's in real estate. Like, our whole family is kind of positioned and built around the home building industry. So when I was out of school and not 100% sure what I would want to do post-secondary, I obviously just kind of went into construction, and I did a bit of traveling around the world, and that was cool because I could use my construction for some cash jobs to get me by. But that evolution, when I got home, it was like, okay, well, and you could actually make really good money. So then all of a sudden, you're like, you know what? Like, this is really good money. I really enjoy it. I love the creativity of taking nothing and building something. Like, you can take a lot of enjoyment out of, you could have 20 sheets of 4x8 MDF sitting on a wall, and you could have a consultation with a couple or whatever, and you say, build me my dream closet. And, a couple days later, you can turn those sheets of MDF into something beautiful, right? I always love that about what we. As time went on, I actually had the opportunity to scale up, and we took on quite a bit of work. I had maybe 14 guys working for me, and it was a disaster. It was not the right time, I don't think, for me, or maybe not the right team. I didn't take the time. It was just more out of necessity. I needed people to do the work, and I ended up making less money running 14 guys than if I could have just kind of went along on my own. So that was a big kind of learning experience. And at that point, I actually kind of decided, you know what, like, finished carpentry, it might be too hard to scale. It might be like, it's too, you need to be too precise, too perfectionist to just have a bunch of people. I felt like it was going to be too much of a challenge. So at that point, I had like one or two helpers. I kind of always had one or two helpers. And I thought, you know what, this is great. It's small. It's small. It's manageable. It's good money, and it provided flexibility. You know what I mean? So I was quite happy with that phase, kind of like I would say the operator phase, for quite a while, and maybe too long, to be honest. Probably kind of sat in that mode for maybe 10 years, and nothing wrong with that. Perfectly happy kind of having a small operation and just doing our thing. But then around when my son was born, he was born in 2019. And then with 2020, there was a lot of uncertainty, kind of 2021, 22. It kind of just got to the point where I was like, you know what, could use a little adventure, put it that way. And maybe, as opposed to when I was younger, in my 20s, now I'm, late 30s, 40. Well, we had built up a reputation, I guess, and builders would take us seriously. So we started getting more and more of these contracts and kind of slowly assembled a team, kind of organically, like a nice, I would say, steady but slow growth. Yeah, but I had learned a lot over the time. So this time, and then again, with the timing, maybe some of it's age, but then some of it's the Calgary economy, right? It's very busy right now. And we were able to kind of capitalize on, 20 years experience in Calgary, good reputation with a lot of builders that we've worked for. Now, all of a sudden, they're doing more work than they've ever done. And now we're growing along with them. And now we're ready. That's the biggest difference.
Awesome. Yeah. And so you mentioned like when your son was born, was that sort of the catalyst to say, I want to go back into sort of that growth mode?
It was huge. I kind of struggle with that, right? Because, I want to build a company. It's more trying to build security, right? For your family. And that all changes when you have a wife and a kid. All of a sudden you feel that necessity to really provide. But at the same time, I'm not the kind of person that wants to be working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week and never see my wife and kid, because that doesn't really get you anywhere either, right? So I kind of struggled with that balance of, do I hustle and grind and try and be that, that 16-hour day, go, or do I prioritize my family, which I do. So a large part of my goal was to basically see how much I could grow. I don't want to say 9 to 5. I mean, that's a bit, but you know what I mean? It's always more than that, but you get what I'm saying. How much can I grow in a reasonable amount of time, while still being there for my wife and my son? And that's been interesting too, because it turns out you only need so much time. If you have the right team, you can scale up. You don't need to work, those hours. And I did a lot of that over the years too. I worked, 7 days a week for months on end, and it never really got me anywhere, to be honest. It wasn't the smartest way to go. I mean, it feels good at the moment, maybe a pad your pocket short term, but it's just not a long-term pattern for success. I didn't find. Yeah.
So it sounds like you did find that balance between sort of, time with your family and then growing the business to a point where it's not sucking you in 7 days a week with the really long days.
It's about the team, right? Like with the right team, as long as we have the proper amount of team for the amount of work we can get everything done. We have that balance. It's hard too, right? Like mostly everyone on our team has young children, and that creates well, a lot of inconsistencies. They seem to always be sick, and it's a priority for us to take care of them. So there's always someone needing some time off, and you have to have that flexibility to be able to do that. Honestly, like family is priority for sure, but we get the work we get the work done.
I'm sure that attracts the right kind of team member when like they know that you value family. That takes precedence. So I'm sure that they appreciate that. So you're bringing in sort of the right people. Did you have like mentors or role models on your way to getting to where you are now, or do you have mentors that like you look up to now?
Like I had some family members that were kind of in construction. I wouldn't say they were mentors, but they definitely opened up that path to, like, I never even considered really an office job. That was never going to be me. Like even though back in the day, like construction might have been a little bit I don't know if it's looked down upon maybe before, but I feel like the trades now, or I feel like people really see the value in trades where, you can make good money, you can have a good life, you can have good flexibility. So I didn't really have a lot of mentors there, but I have a lot of friends that own different businesses. Like some are in construction, but I have one might own a mechanic shop or an apparel company or a screen printing company or auto glass shop. And we all like to chat about business and try and be open and candid, right? Like there's struggles. All of our businesses are very different, but they all run up against some of the same issues, right? So I don't have any, I would say, mentors. However, kind of in the last little bit when I was really looking to learn more, so I went to a Builders and Brew event. That's where I actually first met you. Yeah. And I think the back of your shirt said carpenter on it.
Yeah. It was like, what is it? Precision carpentry.
Right. And I was like, okay, well, carpentry, that's someone I can talk to. It's funny, I went to that thinking, oh, well, this will be a good networking event. Maybe I can go and I'll meet someone who's planning to do a couple 100-unit project, and I can network and give them my number, and maybe something will come of that. Well, it was nothing like that at all, but it was better. Like I got to chat with a lot of people in the industry. There was a guy there. He actually, we got to chatting, and he recommended a book because I was just talking about building the team and whatever, and he recommended Crucial Conversations. So I came away from there and I read that, and I thought, well, you know what, that was kind of productive. Like I actually learned something. It wasn't what I was expecting to learn, but it was maybe better. So, and then I had gone to another event where they had a panel, and it was the Breakthrough Academy were there. And I was chatting with another guy who was at my table, and we were just talking about actually quite a bit about that family work balance and whatever. Anyway, he recommended the Breakthrough Academy podcast. I had never listened to anything. I had never really read anything. I didn't even know that I didn't know that information was available. I really didn't know. So in listening to those things and then getting those book recommendations, reading into that, like I would say, if anything, that might be my mentorship now, is like really realizing that there's actually a network of people that are mentoring. Like I wasn't even aware that was a possibility or that was available to me. So that's been eye-opening and really motivating.
Yeah, and that's a great group, the Builders and Brews. That's been going on for a while, I think, in Calgary. But yeah, that is a great resource. So
Yeah.
yeah, awesome. What about so I know you're established sort of in what you do, so I'm sure all the builders, they know you. Do you find, like, do you do a lot of marketing? Do you have like a marketing strategy, or is it more, you just get referrals just come in?
To this point, in my business, everything has been referral, word of mouth, and reputation. And I think I mentioned, like, we've been doing multifamily for 10 years, but I would say since kind of 2020, 2019, it's been kind of more of a drive to build that team. So now that we're doing well over 7 figures and we haven't done any marketing, but now I'm really starting to turn my attention to that part just to see if we can capitalize on some of the momentum we've made. We've kind of put a lot of systems in place and we're working on a lot of things too, but we have the opportunity to grow and we can manage that. So I'm definitely looking to expand on kind of what we've built. There's a few different builders in town that I would love to have the opportunity to work for. I want to get to a point where I don't want all the builders, but I want to have my choice, right? We work with a lot of trades, a lot of the same trades on different sites. And you hear like, oh, this builder, they're great to work for. Well, those are the people that we want to work for, right? And then some might not have the best reputation, and I want to be able to say no. Like we don't need that, right? In terms of your marketing question, we're actually working on a few things now with a videographer, trying to put some things together. I definitely need to pay a little more attention to social media. That's one thing, like, you find yourself so busy, you neglect that, or I neglect that part of it. But I think it's really important and integral to do that. So I'm trying to focus a little more on that part of it too.
Nice. Yeah. It does seem to be like increasingly important to have that presence on social media. That's the first thing people look at, right? They'll go and look you up on social media once they hear about you.
Exactly. Yeah, and like our website is pretty much just a portal to our Instagram. I mean, there's not a lot of content on the website. It's basically, follow us on Instagram, see what we're up to. Yeah.
I'd like to ask about the future. So what are your goals for the company moving forward? I mean, you talked already about, wanting to have your pick, to work with the best builders in the city. But yeah, sort of, do you have a vision, what the next 10 years would look like? What are you excited about?
I had limits on I had these ideas of limits on my company. I think, I mentioned, I only can grow as much as, 9 to 5. Well, now that we're scaling up, it's like, well, there's almost no limit there. And then I thought, well, I don't want to get to the point where there's any, say, non-revenue generating positions. I wanted to stay kind of small and lean or whatever. And now I'm kind of changing my perspective on that. I've really had to, I've had to pull away from the tools a little bit, unfortunately, because I love working on the tools, but I have to spend more time working, on the business rather than in the business. And now I really don't want to set any limits on it because there's so much potential. So, in the next 5 years, I could definitely see like, it was, I said our core group is 8, but we're kind of 18 as as a peripheral. I could definitely see us, doubling to 40 or 50 people, and definitely tripling our revenue. But at the same time, yeah, I want to grow organically. To me, like, as long as I build a team that can hold that together, that's my main goal, is is kind of more small organic growth. I don't know if that's the right answer, right? Like, I hear a lot of guys talk like, oh, we grow 100% year over year. I don't know if I'm a little maybe risk adverse or a little. I've seen guys grow and crash. I don't. I'm okay with slow and steady as long as we can maintain quality and maintain our workmanship, maintain our relationships, and just have a good reputation. I would say I'm happy where we're at, and I am, but growth is inevitable, and I'm excited for that. So we'll take it as it comes, and I'm not going to place any limits on it because Calgary's growing, we're growing. So we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, I like sort of that strategy because you probably do see that sort of companies are like flash in the pan, like they'll try and grow really fast and then it just implodes because it's not sustainable. So the slow and steady wins the race. I think that's a good way to look at it, and but without putting a ceiling on it because there's so much potential, especially.
Well, and I like the challenge too, right? Like, every time I get a little bit comfortable, it's like, well, now what, right? So I'll definitely embrace the challenge of trying to grow. That's one of the, I've been doing carpentry for so long. Now the business building side of it is actually the fun part. That's what drives me. It is the teamwork. It's the management. It's the, keeping everything running smooth that I really enjoy, right? So if I can't be working on the tools, I can be working on my team, and that's I get a lot of enjoyment out of that.
Here's a fun question: if you were to write a book, what would you write a book about?
I have no business writing a book. This is probably not the answer you're looking for, but if I could write a book, it would be top 10 places to travel, and I would take my wife and we'd go on a trip of the world and do research, and I'd write a book about that.
There's another one I like to ask: is like faith or spirituality part of your life? Does that play a role or influence in your business?
That's an interesting question. I wouldn't say like faith religiously does. I do spend a lot of time listening and thinking about listening to different conversations, different podcasts. I do a lot of thinking. I definitely have my own, I would, not on the woo-woo side, but I would say I'm spiritual to the point where I think it matters. I don't know if you listen to any like of Jordan Peterson, but he says like I don't know exactly what I believe, but I act like I believe. And I would say I follow that kind of sentiment, like those exact thoughts. Yeah. Haven't fleshed those out fully, but you at least act like you have a belief.
Yeah. And that's what's important, right? Because what the rest of the world gets to see is your actions. I'm a big Jordan Peterson and fan. I think he was actually coming to Calgary maybe sometime in February. Okay, just to finish out, I got some rapid fire questions. So just short answers. Book recommendations, and I already took down. You mentioned Crucial Conversations. Anything else?
I'm kind of 3/4 of the way through Buy Back Your Time. I know quite a few of your guests have recommended that. Just finished Essentialism. That was great. I've really found like I said that the Breakthrough Academy as a great resource, and they quite often put out book recommendations, and I would say all of those. Like I'm really just kind of diving into all these books and kind of starting that whole growth part. But I would say I do a lot of listening, right? So on the job site, I can have an earbud in, whether I'm taking phone calls or listening to podcasts. So I really like kind of ingesting all that way. But
yeah, same here. Yeah, I'm all about Audible audiobooks. All right. If you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
My grandmother recently passed away. I would have another dinner with her if I could.
If you could wave a magic wand, be free of any habit, what would it be?
Which one? That's the question. I guess procrastination. Yeah. Sometimes I leave something for tomorrow. Probably could have done it today. So I don't know if some of that's procrastination or just kind of just holding back a little bit. But
I've heard that before. That's a big one for me too. Yeah. What's your favorite or your most used app on your phone?
Well, I don't know if it's considered an app or not, but I probably send 1,500 text messages per day. So that thing, the messaging app is on fire. Yeah, that's constant. Yeah. Handy though. It's so handy. I don't know how, what did we do before that? Like cell phones have really, it's incredible how much you can communicate. Not everything is a phone call. Some things have to be a phone call, but a quick message. That we utilize that a lot, obviously. I remember my parents driving around with a suitcase size thing in their car with when cell phones first came out. And I just don't know how people did it before.
All right. How do you unwind after a long day?
Oh, I'm a big fan of Peloton. I like getting on the bike. Just quick, maybe 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, but just like pedaling hard. I really enjoy the classes. I feel like I can almost turn my brain off, but I really like reflecting on the day and then kind of thinking about tomorrow. And you get a really good focus when you're just pedaling. Yeah, I love that.
All right, that's great. So, Jarret, where can people find you if they want to connect with you and want to find out more about your company?
ModeraConstruction.com. Like I said, that's kind of just a portal to our Instagram, Modera_construction. You can kind of follow along on all the projects that we have going around the city. We currently have couple projects kind of down south in Legacy. We have another one over in Belvedere, a couple in Sage Hill. We have one starting actually in a couple weeks in Sage Hill as well. So we have quite a few different projects going on around the city. And like I said, we do quite a bit of work out in Canmore too. But yeah, follow along there and see what we're up to.
Awesome. That's great. And we'll put that in the show notes so people can find you easily there. Jarret, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care. Have a great one.